there has been 2 releases this year in 2024 that has really caught my eye. And these releases focus on the cases of Sheree Spencer and Eleanor Williams, respectively, that was adjudicated back in 2022. In regards to the case of Sheree Spencer, she was found guilty of domestic violence against her then husband, Richard Spencer. And in regards to Eleanor Williams, she was found guilty for perverting the course of justice. March 24th saw the release of My Wife, My Abuser, the secret footage on Channel 4 that effectively detailed out the relationship and the abuse that Richard Spencer was enduring throughout their 20-year marriage. For this 2-part episode, I am joined by Phil Mitchell, who is a domestic violence expert, and we are going to be discussing how gender bias plays a part in male victimization, as well as why it is important to take false accusations very seriously and understand the nuances that comes with a false accusation. We examine these concepts on the Heinz Griff, and this is the Griff.
I'm a counsellor and psychotherapist, predominantly working with boys and men. I work with girls and women too on various issues, but most of the clients that I see are boys and men, and they have experienced sexual abuse as children, adults, or both. That work, without really intending to, that work kind of led me into working with boys and men affected by other forms of abuse, not just sexual abuse, so domestic abuse, other forms of violence, coercive control, false allegations, paternity fraud, conception by deception, so things that really sort of predominantly, perhaps in some cases, uniquely affect men that we don't often talk about. I also provide supervision to trainee and qualified therapists working with boys and men and other client groups. I deliver training, I deliver webinars, again, all looking at sort of issues around the sexual abuse of boys and men, how masculinity can be utilised and seen as a good thing to help rather than, seen as this horrible thing it often is. Yes, so that's a little bit about me, and I've been doing that for about 19 and a half years, roughly.
That's a very long time. What drives you to keep doing this daily? Because it's a very difficult area to go into. So your work is exemplary, but just by the virtue of that alone. But what drives you to do some to go into?
Well, there's loads of drivers, really. I think I'm a bit of a. It could be argued I'm a bit of a sucker for helping the underdog, and as controversial as it might be, I think boys and men, our society's underdog today. And lots of people will probably hear that and laugh and go, how can you say that? And all that. Well, there's plenty of data, plenty of information to back up what I'm saying, in my opinion. And so I think that's the thing. I think, it's trying to really deal with the horrible stuff that I deal with. So I ran a service for about 9 years that worked with boys who had been sexually abused or who were assessed as being at risk of experiencing sexual abuse. And through that, I very, very quickly realised, wow, girls and women haven't got it perfect by any means. I'm certainly not saying they have. Right. But what I was also seeing was when it comes to male victims, they have really got the crappy end of the stick here about how they're treated, how they're perceived, what was going on. And through that opened my eyes to so many other disadvantages, discrimination, hatred in some cases that male victims and boys and men were kind of being focused on, that they were getting. And I just thought something needs to be done about this. And so I changed the way I work. I did lots of different things, and I saw a huge increase in boys and men getting in touch with therapy.
That's great, because a lot of the studies that I've looked at actually says that men are the least likely to report. And this is a huge factor due to society and their perceptions of male victims. I have spoken with other people about this at length, and trying to get to the bottom of it. And to be quite fair, there is no real pointer as to why men would be scared to come forward because, of course, there's the society, but you also got the abuse component as well, where at the same time, you're like, okay, but if I come forward, what about my kids? If they have kids, for example, I don't want to let her down because I feel like I'm partly responsible for the abuse. I mean, we've had a case so far of Sheree Spencer, for example, which we're gonna discuss in regards to this. What did you think of that case, and what does Richard Spencer represent in regards to male victims?
Well, I mean, male victims are not. I won't say they're this sort of big, gloopy, homogenous group. There's individuals within the heading of male victims. Some guys will get angry, but won't know what to do about it. Some guys will just feel so flattened and so disheartened. Sometimes because they want to look after their kids, they don't want to leave their children with the abusive partner. They think that they're to blame for it. There's issues in terms of masculinity. Oh, well, if I ask for help, well, then my masculinity is threatened even more, so I'm not going to ask for help. What I like to do with those guys is say, well, you can use your masculinity to take control. And this might, and so you reframe it rather than say, well, forget about masculinity. It's like, if it's important to you, let's try and use it. You've also got men where they're just a shell of themselves. So, I've seen comments where people said, oh, well, yeah, all right, Sheree Spencer was shouting at him and bending down and yelling in his face. So what? That poor man's feelings. Oh, it's just feelings.
Shame it takes that level of violence.
And I go, well, one, it's not just feelings, but even if it was, so what? We live in this world where we're constantly being told, men, open up, tell us how you feel, while simultaneously hearing the message, oh, it's only your feelings, they don't matter. Well, hang on, pick one. Which is it? One cancels the other out. But the one thing that I often hear from boys and men that I've worked with, but also just people I speak to online and chat to generally, is they'll go, well, the abuse didn't physically hurt me, or it didn't hurt that bad. I didn't feel that scared, and I don't want to take services away from women who need it. And
even that far? Oh.
Yeah, and I often say, well, hang on a minute. Okay, so if your wife, your girlfriend, or whoever, if they're physically hitting you, and you feel some sort of physical injury or some physical pain, but you don't think it's that bad, and you feel a little bit scared, but you're not terrified, you just try and defend yourself as best you can. Okay? So you're saying you don't feel that scared and you don't feel that much pain. Do you feel respected? And often I find that question really makes some of the guys think, and it doesn't matter how much physical pain you did or did not endure. It doesn't matter how fearful you were or weren't. You have a partner who is being violent towards you. Do you think your partner is showing you respect? Do you deserve that respect? Of course, there are plenty of guys as well who are absolutely terrified, who do suffer horrific injuries, and some of them will go, well, what do I do if I say to someone, she's been doing this to me? Well, she can just go to the police and say, he hit me, and they will believe her. I've never learned you've got a lot of what you might call traditional views where men will go, I should never ever hit a woman, never ever ever in a million years. Even if they are hitting me, never, I just try and make the most of it. So there's lots of kind of, diversity within it. But in answer to your question with Sheree Spencer, there's many things. One of the things that really is interesting, the Guardian newspaper, to date, as I sit here right now, as far as I'm aware, they have not reported on that case at all. You go to the Guardian website and you type in Sheree Spencer. Last time I checked, which was a couple of weeks ago, they have not reported on that case at all. And we both know, in fact, many people know full well, if the genders were switched, if a man had done that, the Guardian would be all over that.
Right. Hey, Ketchup lovers, it's Ketchup Man, and I usually do things to save Heinz's ass, like edit and all those things behind the scenes. But this one, I really had to step in and find the information out, because it was basically said here that Richard Spencer was not on the Guardian website? Well, I went to have a little look, and Richard Spencer was on the Guardian website. It's just another Richard Spencer. I found this very ironic and very funny, and I asked Heinz, can I include this in there? And Heinz said, yes, go ahead. So, yes, even though I'm saving his ass, I still need his permission to save his ass. But here it is. The most ironic thing is that this Richard Spencer was accused of domestic violence, and the other Richard Spencer was not covered at all with Sheree Spencer at all on the site. So I thought that was quite an interesting find. Hope you enjoy the rest of the video, and get your man out.
And I think your deafening silence on addressing this issue says something. And I think there are some people out there that they want to promote and peddle a narrative that's rather distorted. Richard Spencer will not be the only man that's going through this or something similar. He's just one of few men that have now become known.
Right, and that's why I said earlier in regards with him saying that, he is kind of the representative of male victims. Not to say that he is the monolith or he is the emblem or the logo, I was really taken aback by hearing some of the things that he was divulging to in the documentary, divulging to the interviewers. You mentioned masculinity earlier, and when I was watching that, I hate myself for even saying this, but I was like, you could have just said, you could have just man up a bit and just put your foot down.
I think he needs to have that a certain amount of confidence and ability. He needs to have some sort of strength inside him to go, no, enough is enough. Which is often easier said than done. But she has clearly beaten and drained that out of him with the abuse. And like a lot of men in this day and age, we are often told our masculinity is bad and we need to embrace femininity a bit more, and we need to abandon masculinity or change it to in a really extreme way. And so if he had, taken control or tried to take control, which is easier said than done under the circumstances, she could have probably manipulated that against him. I think in the clips that we saw, she already said that she
That's true. That's a very good point.
And that's why a lot of guys don't say anything, because any masculinity that they have left, if that's the right way of wording it, I'm not sure if it is, but any sort of strength or anything like that they've got left, a female perpetrator will use that against them.
That's a good point.
I'm a really thin, petite woman. You are a bloke who, on average, is bigger than me and stronger than me. So I will use that against you. And it's one of the really, it gets annoying because it's such a thoughtless comment. People will say,
do I physically believe, do I believe I physically abused you?
Yes.
Do you know I'm 115, well, not anymore, but I was 115 pounds. I'm a 115-pound woman, and you're going to say I have the capacity to abuse.
That's not the question. That's not the question.
Have I ever been able to knock you off of your feet?
Well, people still say it today. Well, how can a woman abuse a man? A man is stronger than a woman. But the kind of narrative underneath that implies physical strength is all that matters. No, it's not.
It really isn't.
And there are women out there that will abuse their husbands, boyfriends, partners, sons, fathers, and they know full well that man that they are abusing, whether it be verbally, sexually, or physically, they know that man will never hit them back. They know that. Because they know that the man has been brought up to never hit a woman. They know that will be terrible. And the second he even tries to defend himself by pushing somebody off, well, she can phone the police and make a false allegation. And I have permission to share this story because it's quite an old one. I remember a guy who was in bed, his wife or girlfriend, I can't remember exactly which one, came home after a night out. She started laughing and joking, saying, let's make babies. She started kind of touching him. She kind of brought on this erection. He was going, no, I don't want to. she went, well, I'm looking downstairs and it looks like you do want her. And he went, no, I don't want her. I'm telling you no. I'm telling you no. She started having a go at him. An argument broke out. She tried to get on top of him and force him to penetrate her. He said, no, I'm telling you no. I don't want to do this. I'm not in the mood. Stop it. She wouldn't listen. She's kind of writhing around. So he pushes her. He pushes her off of him. And as she falls, she hits her head on the side of the bed. She phones the police come round. They can see on the side of the bed that there's a little mark or a little type of bit of blood where, so they see her mark on her head, and she's saying, I'm really, really, really scared. He's arrested and put in the cells. And in that, what was he meant to have done? Is he meant to make sure he removes, this woman from him with the absolute perfect amount of force? He's saying no and she's not listening. So he has the right to kind of physically remove her. But again, she said, oh, he forced me, all of this. Well, who are the police going to believe? And that comes back to my point about any masculinity or physical strength that a man does have. A manipulative female perpetrator can use that to her advantage. So the whole idea that this man's got strength and that should be enough to stop, no, it can be enough for her to perpetrate the abuse.
Right. And I always find that argument to be very flawed anyway, because even the strongest, there was a story in regards to, I'm going to link it below anyway, but there's a story in regards to these two gym goers, like one, both of them gym.
And bro, I debated talking about this for a long time. And the reason I'm going to talk about this is because, I thought about it, and if the roles were reversed, I'd be in jail or I'd have my career ruined. Yeah. So I was like, f this. I'm going to at least just, spit the truth, nothing but the truth. Dude, it's hard, bro. Just going back on like mental health and shit, like as a man, you're supposed to kind of just like silence and like shut up. Also I got rocked, bro. I got schmacked, bro. I've never been in a toxic relationship before, ever. This was the first girl that I let myself fall in love with. The second that I got my ass beat and I got a couple right hooks thrown at me and a busted lip and a kicked down door that next day. Long story short, fellas, if your girl is cracking you, don't put up with that. The second that happened, I was out.
And she was abusing him. It's if he did anything at that point, he was done. Because just for this sheer size alone, depending on how you react, it may 9 times out of 10 it will be the wrong choice. Like it would, like even if you react in the most tamest way, it will be the wrong choice. You kind of have to be, unfortunately, I hate to use him as an example. You kind of have to be like Richard Spencer for you to have a fighting chance, really, because he didn't really do anything. He was just de-escalating every single time, trying to walk away, trying to keep the peace. And sometimes that doesn't even work if you look at other cases. But I want to break down masculinity as you understand it, because I find it to be very subjective. I find it to be, is there an objective way to view masculinity, or is it too socialized in our understanding of it?
Well, I think, so it's a bit about that. I don't believe that masculinity can be put down purely to socialization at all. I think that's an element of it, definitely. There's biological elements as well. So anybody who comes from the school is saying masculinity is 100% purely a social construct. I don't agree with that. Look at what we see in the animal kingdom. Look at what we see historically. And I would refer to Martin Seeger's work. So Martin Seeger is a child psychologist. He wrote one of the chapters in the Palgrave Handbook of Male Psychology and Mental Health, which is a very, very big book, very massive, quite expensive, but a brilliant book. And he talks about the archetypes of masculinity, which are sort of fighting and winning, providing and protecting, and self-mastery and control. And he says that those kind of attributes, those traits, if you like, we kind of generally see them on average more in men than women.
stoicism, basically. So
Sort of like, yeah, I guess. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's not saying that that's how men should be or shouldn't be. It's just saying it's how many men naturally are. And how they display those traits is a different issue. But ultimately, it's this kind of natural aspect of humanity. And it's kind of like a set of behaviours, if you like, that you generally see on average in a certain way more in men than women. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's fine. And most of those traits, if you like, are displayed by men in a very positive, healthy way. The way that the vast majority of men use their physical strength is to help people, to protect people, to save lives, to build civilization, to contribute towards the running of the world. All of that. There is a minority of men that use their physical strength to harm and abuse others. But what we do is society, the media, government, we kind of distort the narrative that gives this implication that, no, men are using their physical strength to harm more than they are to help. It's absolute rubbish. It really is absolute rubbish. What I do... Sorry, go on.
No.
I was going to say that what I do in my work with boys and men is, if masculinity is a relevant factor, and sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. It depends on the guy that I'm working with and what comes up. What I do is I will try and understand what they see as masculinity, explore with them if their perception or beliefs around masculinity are too rigid or not, or how helpful and healthy it is or not. And then we will utilise their masculinity to help them deal with the abuse that they've overcome. And I find that in most cases, that absolutely helps boys and men engage in therapy and get to a positive outcome.
You mentioned Martin Seeger earlier. I spoke with him in regards to this, and he was speaking about gamma bias and kind of breaking that down into how society perceives men and men's wrongdoings, for example, and women's wrongdoings, men's good deeds and women's good deeds. And it was interesting how he brought out that, exactly as you put, when something is done wrong by men, it is basically amplified to encompass all genders. Sorry, not all genders, all men, sorry. Yeah. But when it's a woman, it's treated as more humane, as basically, he didn't say that word, by the way. I'm using that now. But the basic idea I'm trying to get across is they are actually seen as individuals. This is an individual isolated case. It's not really for all women. What I've always wanted to try and figure out was, what do you think has been a factor to contribute to this discourse that men are necessarily bad, even though there's objective, and I mean, you don't even have to go far. You just have to look outside. There is objective data in front of you to show that their contributions, by and large, by men outweighs the minority that, or the bad doers that you're trying to bring out. What do you think contributes to that kind of bias that
well,
exists?
I think in simple terms, it's because we live in a society that really doesn't care about men. You could even say we live in a society that often hates men as a demographic, and there's plenty of anecdotes and information to back that up, I think. But I think it's power, money, and control. So, the war of men versus women, which is ridiculous, saying, but I think, often that's how it's phrased by many people. Mm. You have a large body of people, government, society, media, and they basically say, or they imply, should we say, from what you read in the news, the headlines, policies that are made, various things you see online, the implication is, look, well, actually, hang on, the power, men have it or women have it. We can't both share it. The control, and actually, if we can distort the narrative to a certain point, which says, look, men have got all the power, they've got all this privilege, all this power, and they are doing all of the harm, and that's how we can portray them, then that means we, the other group, and I'm not just saying just women, it can be women and other sort of men that support these women, all of that sort of will say, well, we don't want men to have that power, so if we can portray them as abusive, privileged, inherent abusers, then that means that they are now looking as a group as the abusers. We now look like the victims of that, so then that means we now have the power to talk about them in a dehumanizing and derogatory way. Again, I'm not saying all women, and I'm maybe not even saying most women. I'm saying a large number of women and a number of men, to be honest. For me, I often say it's not about whether it's men or women, it's about the attitude of people, men and women, that view men generally as this sort of subhuman category. And the other one, as I said, is money. So there's been a few comments by CEOs of various charities, certain comments made by MP in the House of Commons where they have said, we're a little bit worried if we kind of, and again, don't quote me exactly because I might be getting it wrong here, but they've said words to the effect of, well, if we highlight that, there's a lot of male victims, those advocate for female victims might not like that. And so there is all of all these politics behind it.
Sorry,
and so,
I'm just charging. So sorry, I'm just charging.
No, you're right. And so there's all these politics behind it, and it kind of really does distort the narrative. But I think it's a narrative some people want to have distorting. It's a little bit like the recent trend with the man versus bear thing, where everyone's asking that, and the kind of commentary was, well, no, it's women just want us to know how scared they are of men. And I think for some women, that's absolutely true. That is why they were doing it. Some women and some men as well were doing it because they wanted to proudly and publicly say, aren't men just absolutely terrible? It wasn't anything to do with highlighting how fearful you are of men. And for me, I always ask the question, okay, so the group of women, whatever numbers or percentage we're talking about here, I don't know, but the group of women that genuinely fear men, that went online and said, I'm telling you, I would choose a bear over a man because I genuinely fear men. Okay, well, shouldn't we be working to reduce that fear? Isn't that what we should be doing? But we're not. All we do is maintain it or increase it. I have a fear of aeroplanes. I don't like flying, and I'm quite scared of it. And that's for me to do something about, right? Do I want to do something about it? Well, it's my choice whether I do. But what I don't do is go to my local airport and shout at all the planes saying, you need to be better. You're all terrible. You need to be safer for me to fly on. And that's, and that's the thing, as Joe Hildebrand, a journalist, I think, he once said, abusive men aren't going to listen, and non-abusive men don't need to be told. So who's your audience? And so I think, again, I think for me, it's weaponizing fear and victimhood and using that to poorly justify this mass hatred of men.
Well, in regards to your fear of flying, I mean, exactly going to say, well, I'd rather jump on an albatross back and fly wherever you need to go, or whatever. What they like a dino? I don't know what dangerous animal I can equate it to.
No idea.
I have no idea. But you get the point. You're not going to be like, you're not going to be like, I'm going to spend time with this dangerous animal rather than fly just because you have a fear of flying. And that's a very good point. I mean, and that is, again, I think we're doing it here because I think by average, a lot of men do care for women's, emotions and women's opinions about what they have to say, because you have shown it here, because you've done it where you have basically said not all. There is always those caveats and qualifiers, as if something is going to happen to you if you don't say that. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, absolutely.
I mean, I kind of have it all the time. So when I talk about misandry and people who are misandrists, a lot of people will see that and go, you're talking about women. No, I'm not. They're not the same thing. A misandrist is a person who hates, dislikes, disrespects, or has contempt for men. that can be another man. It's not just women. And again, you
it's the same thing with misogyny. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. You can get and do get a number of men who make real, us men, we are scum, we need to be better, all that. So, well, that what, so it's not, for me, it's about the attitude and the beliefs and the thinking, rather than whether that person is a man or a woman. It's the attitude that's directed towards men from other men, but also sometimes from women. That's the attitude. I've debated with people on Twitter. I've tried to stop doing that now because there's just no point to it. But, I don't know if the person I'm speaking to is a man or a woman. I don't care. I care about the words they're using and the point that they are making. So when they are saying things such as, yes, I do, I think all men should be, they should be a curfew, 8 o'clock at night, all men should be inside and they shouldn't go out. Now, whether that's come from a man or a woman, I don't care. I care about that belief and that attitude, and I care about addressing that rather than, sorry, are you a man or a woman? Because it doesn't matter. They still said it, they still believe it, and that's what I want to address.
Put it this way. We do have an issue with domestic violence. We do have an issue with, the R word. We have an issue with these things, but do you think that the bias that, when it comes to the discourse with men and women, do you think that these biases are helping the issue, in trying to, understand it better? Or do you think it's furthering blurring the lines and it's making things a lot more difficult?
Well, I think they're certainly not helping any male victims at all. They're certainly not helping any boys and men, generally speaking. I see people all the time saying, well, I'm just going to walk away. If you prefer the bear, fine, you choose the bear. But then don't come to me when you say I'm not doing anything good enough or I'm not helping. I think it's isolating a lot of men. Like I said, the abusive men, the men that are going to be violent and abusive, they don't care. They don't care. It's like someone's going online saying you prefer the bear to a man. Well, that's not gonna. I don't think that any abusive man has heard that and go, oh my God, my feelings are hurt, I better stop being abusive. I don't think that's ever going to happen, right? So, but then you've got the non-abusive men. They're going, well, hang on a minute. I feel quite isolated now. You're lumping me in with these abusive men because we share a demographic. And so some men are going, I understand that. Yes, of course. And everyone's got different views on those sorts of men. But I think there's something where the other men are going, well, I would never do that. That's horrible. But why are you putting me in with them? You're making me feel isolated. And then you've got others going, well, you're part of the problem. No, it's a problem if you expect me as a man to tolerate being compared to a bear. It's a problem if you think because I'm a man, it's okay for you to dehumanize me in this way. So all of these comments and the biases, I think what we do is it makes men who, if they do get to the point where they realize they are being or have been abused, they'll just shut up and not say anything. Because why should they? Because what's happening, and I think Martin Seeger's talked about this before, we shine a spotlight on men as perpetrators and women as victims. But that spotlight plunges into darkness when it looks at women as perpetrators and men as victims. What really interests me is I wish one day to going back to Sheree Spencer and Richard Spencer. I actually wish one day I could speak to Richard Spencer because I do want to pose this question to him. Would you rather would you rather encounter Sheree Spencer in a forest, or would you rather encounter a bear? And I know how it sounds because he's a victim, but his answer based on that documentary would most likely still be Sheree Spencer. And that is maybe.
But
that's where the bear versus man went. It wasn't bear versus abusive man. It was bear versus man. And there's a key difference there. But I think, you saw it yourself in the documentary. I think when he got to the point where he was starting to put the pieces together and he did realise that this was bad, this was wrong, it was abuse, he was still protective of her. Right. And I think that's it. So even when some, perhaps even many men, are being abused by their female partner, they still feel protective of them. And that just backs up how for many men, that kind of innate trait, if you like, to provide and protect is so strong that they'll do it even when the person they want to provide and protect is abusing them. And a lot of guys, put up with it for lots of reasons for many years.
Because you mentioned power earlier, in regards to the whole power dynamic that is trying to be put forward when it comes to this discourse, usually that defaults to men. We cannot say that in the case of Sheree Spencer, because I actually believe she had all the power in that relationship. But if you want to put that, this idea of masculinity and men having inherent power, it kind of falls apart when you look at Sheree Spencer, for example.
Absolutely. I don't think it's always the case that it's as simple as you have power, I don't. I think it might be more accurate to say in many cases, one person has got a certain type of power and the other person's got a different type of power. Anyone who is able to turn around at the drop of a hat and say, hey, I'm a victim, I've been abused, you must believe me and act accordingly, that has to be seen as a certain type of power that you have, okay? Whereas it might, so there's different types, physical strength, influence, verbal communication and convincing people, finances. So I don't think it's, there's different types of power, if you like.
In the case of Sheree Spencer, when she was in custody, she was asked to, give testimony in regards to what was going on in the relationship. And I saw probably the best indicator of DARVO there is. That it was so textbook that it was so textbook that I was actually lost for words. And I was kind of like, I was like, what world are we living in? Because without any evidence, you would believe her. You would actually think that Richard was this menace, irrespective of whatever witness he might call to speak on his behalf. Should this have gone? Should she have not pleaded not guilty? But there was so much evidence that obviously, she ended up pleading guilty in the end.
And what you're holding in your right hand?
Yeah, it looks like a sharp object.
It's a sharp object. It's a carving knife. That's true. What did you do then?
I forgot to push him back.
You've got a knife in your hand. What are you pushing him for with a knife in your hand? So you must know exactly what's happening here. Could you explain that to me, please?
I wanted to give him it because he had threatened me that he wanted to kill me. He'd rather kill me than divorce me. And I did reach for a knife, and then if he wants to kill me, just do it.
Shame it takes that 11 lines.
How common is DARVO with women?
On average, right, men, on average, and you can see I'm picking my words carefully, have got more physical strength than women on average. That's a fact. Right. The other fact is that women, on average, have got more parts of the brain dedicated to language, communication, verbal communication, and that sort of thing. A minority of men will use their physical strength to harm others. So women, on average, know they don't have that physical strength. So what do they have? They have the optimization in their brain for language, communication, and verbal stuff. It's one of the reasons we see differences in career choice. And so if a minority of men are going to use their physical strength to harm others, it makes absolute logical sense that a minority of women will use their optimized brain around communication to harm others. False allegations. DARVO. It makes sense, okay? And so, again, a minority of men, a minority of women, of course. Most men, decent people. Most women, decent people. Goes without saying.
Do you think that DARVO is common among female abusers? Because
absolutely, I see it. So, personal disclosure: when I was 15, I'd been bullied for years in school. I was having a really tough time, and I took an overdose and tried to kill myself. It didn't work, and about less than a year later, an auntie in my family, she said, look, this is getting really bad. The bullying's continuing. Life's terrible. We need to tell your mum and dad. So I was really nervous. No, don't tell, all that sort of stuff. But I thought, right, it's probably best they tell. So ultimately, the auntie figure told my mum and dad that, I'd had all this bullying and all these problems, and that the year or so before, when I was violently sick all over the place, it wasn't because I was ill, because I tried to kill myself and it didn't work. And my mum responded by shouting and screaming, grabbing a bottle of tablets out of the kitchen cupboard, taking the lid off, swallowing all of these tablets in front of me and saying, there, you like overdoses, do you? Are you happy now? And I remember being sort of 15ish thinking, oh my God, that's really bad. I'm a terrible person. I've just made my mum take an overdose. The adult version of me looks back going, no, that's not what it is. It's my mother. She could not handle the fact that for a split second, the victim spotlight is not on her. It's on somebody else. And so and I see this a lot playing out. If the victim spotlight is on a boy or a man, we'll do whatever we can to divert it back to girls and women. I see it on an individual basis. I see it on a massive basis. And then you see that playing out ever so slightly differently with perpetrators, where they do exactly what you said. And it would be, okay, hang on a minute. Is it starting to look like I'm the perpetrator now? Right, I will distort the narrative to whatever length I can, and I will take the concept of victimhood, manipulate it and weaponize it to make myself look like a victim when I'm not. And so I think it's very, very common, and I don't think we have enough research around it, and we need more. There is some out there, but this sort of thing happens more. And again, it comes back to that point where, men have got more muscle, a minority of them will use it to harm. Women have got more parts of the brain dedicated to language and communication and words. A minority will use that to harm.
It's actually I never looked at DARVO the way that you just put it, in terms of, because that's not technically an abusive situation, but it's still a kind of reversing
exactly.
Yeah, there is still a reversal. I never saw it like that. You mentioned false accusations earlier, and that is something that definitely happened in the case of Eleanor Williams. If you would like extended coverage of cases that we cover, make sure you head over to our sister channel called Ketchup Court, where we go through trial watch, as well as reading filings and giving you comprehensive updates on legal cases. It's all happening over there. Make sure you hit subscribe on there, as well as on here, and hit the like button. I also would like to give a shout out to all the members that have signed up to Heinz All. Every single one of you are so important, and that goes for Random Girl and Yelly Bean. I appreciate all of your contributions and for being members. New exclusive videos are coming right to Heinz Halls. We have also launched a Patreon service as well as a Discord, so do keep an eye out on that community tab, because I will be posting updates on there. If you like interviews, you can check out the latest one with a senior lecturer at Manchester Met University, as well as a playlist of all the interviews that I've done for the Debt We Heard docuseries. But in the meantime, I appreciate every single one of you for taking the time out to watch this video. Take care of yourself and have a great day. Bye bye.